Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today, we are taking a profound journey into one of the 20th century's most essential historical documents.
That's
Grossman's a writer at war, a Soviet journalist with the Red Army 1941-1945. It's brilliantly edited and translated by Antony Beevor. And this isn't, just a collection of wartime dispatches. It's really a raw, unfiltered look at the brutal Soviet-German war, seen through the eyes of a truly extraordinary witness. It explores the full scope of this monumental conflict.
Exactly. Grossman's notebooks and letters, they capture this relentless four-year conflict on the Eastern Front with just astonishing clarity. You're immediately thrust into the immense scale of suffering, but also the incredible resilience of Soviet soldiers and civilians. What's particularly striking, I think, is Grossman's deeply personal struggle with the war, especially, the devastating loss of his family in the Holocaust. He presents such a stark contrast between official Soviet propaganda and what he famously called the ruthless truth of war that he observed firsthand.
Yeah, that phrase really sticks with you.
And it does, and this includes everything from, the bureaucratic inefficiencies and the brutal discipline within the Red Army, right up to the systematic, industrialized murder he witnessed at Treblinka.
It's an intense read. Absolutely vital, though. It really changes how you view this period. And for this deep dive, our mission is basically to take you through Grossman's journey chronologically. We want to unpack the most impactful moments and insights straight from his observations. We're going to explore what these incredible firsthand accounts reveal about human nature under, unimaginable pressure. Okay, let's unpack this. So Grossman's wartime experience kicks off August 5, 1941. He's assigned as a war correspondent, and boom, he's immediately plunged into chaos. He talks about being caught up in considerable commotion near railway stations, bombs making these black holes, craters everywhere, just a dizzying rush trying to make sense of a collapsing front.
And that immediate plunge, it really tells us so much about the initial Soviet unpreparedness, doesn't it? The German encirclement of Kiev, for example, was utterly devastating. Capturing over 600,000 prisoners, the sources call it the most crushing victory ever known. This wasn't just a military defeat, it was a systemic failure. And Stalin, in characteristic fashion, he needed a scapegoat.
Right.
So the unfortunate General D.G. Pavlov, commander of the Western Front, he was accused of treason and executed. This wasn't just about accountability, it really revealed that paranoid top-down Soviet system. Fear and arbitrary justice were tools of control, and that profoundly shaped the Red Army's culture right through the war.
And Grossman saw this profound disconnect immediately, didn't he? How did he capture that absurd gap between the official talk and the grim reality he was seeing?
Oh, he captured it perfectly. While the official front newspapers were claiming things like, the much battered enemy continued his cowardly advance, Grossman himself was, sleeping on the floor in a library, using gas masks as pillows, witnessing actual horror. Those early Red Army experiences were full of blunders, like their own Air Force accidentally bombing friendly troops.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it led to this grim joke among the soldiers. Ours, then where's my helmet? It really raises a crucial question about how any fighting force maintains cohesion in circumstances like that.
That's a fascinating point. And Grossman shows us, amidst that chaos, it was often that deeply personal human element, wasn't it? The bonds forged in shared suffering, that provided some strange kind of cohesion. He recounts these heartbreaking scenes like blind men from an invalid home tied together with towels, fleeing Minsk as it burned. And then there's that poignant image of a village shelled into ruins, chimneys standing tall amidst the rubble, but cornflowers and peonies still flaunting themselves so peacefully. It's just such a surreal blend.
That blend of the devastating and the deeply human, that's absolutely key to his work. And this early period also brought profound personal anguish for Grossman. His mother was in Kiev, and despite his frantic efforts, she couldn't escape before the Germans arrived. She refused to leave an incapacitated niece.
Oh.
He never saw her again. And the sources tell us he reproached himself for the rest of his life. It's a theme he explored so powerfully through Victor Sturm in Life and Fate. This personal grief, it undoubtedly fueled his quest to document the full, unvarnished truth of the war.
And he wasn't just observing from a distance, he was right there. He talks about his own narrow escape from the German sack near Bryansk, racing German tanks under a cold sky, trying to get out before the Germans tied it up. What did he see in the faces of the others fleeing with him?
He paints this incredibly vivid picture of what he called the flowing ocean of refugees hundreds of meters wide. A mix of biblical beards of Jewish elders, shawls of peasant women, black-haired heads of Jewish girls, all moving in what he described as a universal catastrophe. The sense of wise sorrow in their eyes, the sensation of fate, it's haunting, Just a snapshot of humanity's forced migration stripped bare.
But even in all that, there are these glimmers of extraordinary kindness, like that anecdote about the old woman in a cold, dark izba, a traditional wooden house near Tula. Her son, a farm chairman, wouldn't let her stay with him because his wife forbade it. Her favorite son was fighting near Smolensk. No news from him.
Such hardship.
Exactly. And yet, despite everything, she welcomes Grossman and his companions with Tsarina-like generosity, sharing the little food she had.
And that encounter, it clearly had a deep impact. Grossman writes that the drivers with him, they were so moved by her kindness, they went into a kind of frenzy of kindness. They looted the whole area, bringing her so much firewood and potatoes, she'd be set until spring. It highlights that powerful counterpoint to the brutality, doesn't it? That deep wellspring of human compassion that can emerge even in the direst times.
It really does. It shows that even in total war, humanity finds ways. So as 1942 dawned, the war's focus shifts dramatically toward Stalingrad. Initially, it seemed almost unthinkable the Germans would reach the Volga, let alone attack the city named after Stalin. A costly underestimation.
Absolutely. The horrors of the Stalingrad bombing on August 23, 1942, he describes them vividly. Oil tanks ablaze, black smoke visible for days. And that terrible dust of retreat that he said ate up men's faith, it really broke spirits and forced this grim recalculation of what was truly at stake.
Yet out of that terror, General Chikov, commander of the 62nd Army, develops what he called the Stalingrad Academy of Street Fighting. His troops dug trenches incredibly close to the enemy lines, trying to negate German air power. Led to what the Germans called Rattenkrieg, or Rat War, this brutal close-quarters stuff.
And the motivation for this desperate fighting was just stark. Retreat meant ruin. If you retreated, you'd be shot. If I did, I'd be shot. That constant threat, it raises profound questions about courage, Was it just desperation? Grossman shows us a different kind of bravery here, almost primal, survival-driven. The choice wasn't really victory or defeat, but life or immediate death from your own side. It created an environment where every inch was fought for with incredible ferocity.
He experienced the Volga crossing himself, called it a hell, soldiers so enraged they'd ram prisoners' faces into the water, and then you have those iconic Karasinka pilots, these simple little U-2 biplanes, often flown by women, the night witches, the Germans called them, cutting their engines, silently dropping small bombs. Terrifying in the darkness.
He also dug into the fascinating accounts of snipers, like Vasily Zaitsev, who became famous through propaganda, and Anatoly Chekhov. Chekhov described his approach almost clinically. It is more convenient for me to shoot when he is running. It's easier for my hand-eye. These interviews give such critical insights into the psychology of combat, the dehumanization that war inevitably brings. For some, it wasn't about hate. It was about efficiency in a brutal system.
And amidst all this, life and death just exist side by side. Grossman sees a field kitchen cook making tiny pelmeni, little dumplings, while German planes are diving down. Then there's that bureaucratic absurdity, a quartermaster refusing new trousers to a soldier whose old ones are literally burning just because the minimum period hadn't lapsed.
Incredible, isn't it? That institutional rigidity clashing with the raw reality of the front, often with fatal results, you imagine. And connecting back to Grossman's personal loss, he finds the grave of his young cousin, Yura Banash, near a command post, killed in an explosion. Grossman notes, no one to cry for him. And it's so powerful how his personal grief for his mother just mirrors the collective tragedy unfolding all around him. It amplifies the weight of it all.
Moving into 1943 after Stalingrad, there's a bit of a lull before the massive Battle of Kursk. Grossman observes the vanity, the arrogance of some commanders, always boasting, and just how young so many of the junior officers were, thrust into these huge responsibilities.
Yeah, the sources really highlight the challenges of Soviet command, where stupidity or just fear of one's seniors often led to these senseless forward orders, resulting in horrendous casualties. It was a system where initiative could be punished. Sticking to orders, even illogical ones, was often safer than thinking for yourself, which explains some of those staggering losses the Red Army took.
And the soldiers, they're living this grueling life. They talk about the constant dust, the lack of sleep making them somehow better when there's fighting just to stay awake, and that bittersweet disappointment of being pulled from battle just when they wanted to maybe plant some tobacco. These small human desires are so telling.
Then, in 1944, the Red Army's advance through Ukraine becomes harrowing. Grossman returns to Berdyshev, his hometown. All his fears about his mother and relatives are confirmed, slaughtered in one of the first massacres of Jews. But his greatest shock, and one of the most brutal revelations in the book, really, was discovering the major role that local Ukrainians played as auxiliary police in these atrocities. A devastating truth about complicity that went beyond just the Germans.
Wow, that's incredibly difficult. And yet, amidst that horror, there was a small contrary experience too, wasn't there? A surprising reunion.
Yes, incredibly. He met Major Babadzunyan, the hero of his earlier novel, The People Immortal. Grossman had presumed him dead back in those desperate early days. A powerful moment of unexpected survival, a small flicker of light in a very dark narrative.
But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared Grossman or us as readers for what came next. In 1944, he arrived at Treblinka. He described it as 100 times more terrible than any concentration camp he'd even heard of.
It was. It was the true face of industrialized murder. He meticulously documented the systematic, chilling nature of it all. The fake sanatorium sign to deceive the sick and elderly into thinking they were going to a hospital. SS men like Zepf, who specialized in killing children by tearing the child in two halves, and that chilling path, the road of no return leading to the gas chambers.
The details are they're almost impossible to comprehend. Victims carefully leaving belongings, thinking they'd get them back. The command changing from Achtung to something more brutal, stripping away any pretense, that monstrous stupefaction induced by senseless cruelty, and the dog, Barry, trained to attack victims' private parts. What does including details like that tell us, beyond just the killing?
It tells us they aimed for complete degradation, total dehumanization, not just death. Grossman initially estimated around 3 million people killed there, a figure later refined by historians, but it reflects the immense scale he encountered. He learned that Himmler ordered the burning of the corpses after the Red Army's victory at Stalingrad, a desperate attempt to hide the evidence of their monstrous crimes. And the SS men watching the burning would sometimes say, "Innocent, innocent," a phrase that just captures their perverse, detached cruelty.
In the imagery from the burning pits, it's profoundly horrific. He describes stomachs of dead pregnant women cracking open, unborn babies burned on the open wombs of the mothers. Even just reading it aloud is difficult. Why was it so vital for him to include these unspeakable details?
It was that unwavering commitment to the ruthless truth. He refused to sanitize anything. He had to bear witness, ensure the full horror was recorded no matter how unbearable. He even observed the SS men's boredom with the routine killing. They only found amusement, he noted, when the burning of corpses started. They even organized picnics by the furnaces, sitting on benches around the burning pits, as if it were a stadium. That chilling detail just highlights the absolute ultimate dehumanization of the perpetrators, mass murder as spectacle.
Unbelievable. Then finally, 1945, the Red Army advances into Poland and Germany. He describes tanks smashing through river ice to cross the Pilka, and the general chaos, the rampant looting that went with the army, even the tragic, absurd death of Colonel Gorlov, a hero of the Soviet Union, killed accidentally while sorting out traffic, probably by drunken soldiers.
Grossman paints this bleak picture of devastated cities. Warsaw's ghetto reduced to waves of stone, crushed bricks, a sea of brick, a haunting monument to loss. He also noted the palpable fear of German women and girls, soldiers sometimes giving just a single ruble for a seized watch, a small act, but it speaks volumes about the power dynamics of occupation, the cycle of revenge.
The entry into Berlin itself sounds surreal, finding dachshunds, parrots, peacocks in a commander's house. And the final shots of the war near the Reichstag. SS men refusing to surrender, huge guns blasting yellow fire at their building, everything swamped in stone dust and black smoke.
Yeah, Grossman's observations give this really complex picture of the final push. There's the undeniable courage and fighting spirit that got them there after years of unimaginable fighting. But he also chronicled the grim realities, the looting, the widespread drunkenness, the revenge killings in occupied territories. A direct reflection, perhaps, of the appalling anti-partisan war the Germans had waged, which had brutalized everyone. It's a reminder that even victors can commit atrocities born from years of that brutalization.
And as a sort of symbolic end to his journey, Grossman even joined others searching for souvenirs in Hitler's Reich Chancellery, his Berlin headquarters. It feels like a strangely mundane act after witnessing such immense history, a quiet acknowledgement of the collapse of that regime. Vasily Grossman's A Writer at War is just an immense achievement, isn't it? It presents this comprehensive, raw, often contradictory account of the war, that ruthless truth that defied easy narratives, simple heroics. It took incredible moral courage to write.
Absolutely. And his belief in that ruthless truth was cruelly scorned later by the Soviet authorities. They tried to suppress information about the Holocaust, about the complexities of the war, he revealed. Grossman deeply understood fear and courage. He said, just as there are two kinds of courage, I think you should distinguish between different kinds of fear: a physical fear, which is a fear of death, and moral fear, which is the fear of disgracing yourself in front of others. That intellectual and moral courage, his refusal to compromise on what he saw and felt, that defined his work, and ultimately it led to the suppression of his greatest novels.
So what does all this mean for us listening today? Grossman's meticulous record-keeping, it reminds us of the profound importance of bearing witness. Even when the truth is deeply uncomfortable or devastating, it's really a testament to the human spirit's capacity for both immense cruelty and somehow extraordinary resilience. What stands out to you about his journey and that ruthless truth of war he sought so desperately to uncover?